Here's a useful expression that I use and you will hear all the time. You know, it's used by fluent speakers to check that the listener is following or just filling a short pause while thinking. You will hear it pronounced, you know, or more commonly, you know. For example, if I'm telling a story about my weekend, I might say, I went hiking on Saturday. The weather was perfect and we stayed out until sunset. It helps the conversation feel smooth and natural. Another example, if I am explaining something simple to a friend, I could say, the instructions are pretty easy, just plug it in and press the button. You hear how it keeps the flow going without stopping. In this lesson, I'm going to teach you common English expressions that I use all the time and that native English speakers actually use day after day. I'll give you a simple meaning and a few examples so you can start to use them right away. These are small, subtle, yet important and extremely common phrases fluent speakers use to say exactly what they mean to say. Next expression, kind of. This means somewhat or a little bit, but not completely. This is sometimes pronounced kind of, and sometimes it's pronounced kinda. For example, if someone asks how I feel after a long day, I might say, I'm kinda tired. This means I'm a little bit tired, but not extremely tired. Or if I'm describing a movie, I could say, the story was kinda confusing at first. It shows the story was a little bit confusing, but not impossible to understand. Sort of is very similar to kind of, and also means somewhat or almost. At times it's pronounced sort of, sometimes it's pronounced sorta. For example, if I'm talking about my plans for the evening, I might say, I'm sort of thinking about ordering pizza tonight. This means I'm considering it, but I haven't decided for sure. Or if a task is almost finished, I could say, the report is sort of done. I just need to check the numbers one more time. A little bit means a small amount or slightly. At times it's pronounced a little bit, other times you'll hear little bit. For example, if someone offers me coffee and I don't want much, I could say, just a little bit, please. Or if I'm talking about the weather, I might say, it's a little bit cold outside today, so bring a jacket. If you're looking for some extra help with your goal of becoming fluent, check the link in the description for our online community, the B2C Nation, to see how we can help with actual conversation practice, lessons tailored to what you need to learn, and access to ask all the questions you may have in a safe, respectful community. Basically, we built this community to help you go from a B1 or B2 level to a C1 level. Basically is an extremely common word in everyday English. It means in simple terms, or the main point is this. For example, if I'm explaining a complicated meeting to a friend, I could say, basically, we decided to change the schedule. It gives the main idea without all the small details. Or if someone asks why I'm late, I might say, basically, the traffic was really bad this morning. The bad traffic was the primary or main reason as to why I was late. Pretty much means almost completely or basically. Notice how the T's are pronounced as D's, pretty much. For example, if I finished cleaning the kitchen, I could say, I'm pretty much done with the dishes. This means almost everything is finished. Or if I'm describing a situation that hasn't changed, I might say, things are pretty much the same as last week. Things are basically the same as they were last week. Next expression, I mean. This is used to explain or correct what you just said, or to make something clearer. For example, if I say, the test was hard, I mean, it was really challenging for everyone. The words, I mean, help add more information right away. Or if I make a small mistake while speaking, I could say, we met at the park. I mean, at the cafe near the park. At first, I said we met at the park, but then I corrected myself to say we met at the cafe near the park. You see, is another simple but extremely common phrase in daily English. It's used when you're explaining something and want the listener to understand your point. For example, if I'm telling why I chose a new phone, I might say, I needed better battery life. You see, because I travel a lot for work. I've added you see to explain why I needed better battery life. Or if I'm giving advice, I could say, try to start early, you see, so you don't feel rushed later. Again, you see is specifying why you need to start early, so you don't feel rushed later. Actually is a word you may have heard me talk about in other lessons. It's used to add new or surprising information, or to gently correct something. For example, if someone thinks I don't like sports, I might say, actually, I play soccer every weekend. Here, I'm adding something to the conversation that the other person may not know. The fact that I play soccer may surprise the other person. So I say, actually, I play soccer on the weekend. Or if I'm sharing a fact, I could say, the meeting starts at 10. Actually, they changed the time yesterday. The fact that they changed the meeting to 10 is new information to the listener. Of course means obviously or as everyone knows. For example, if I'm talking about a simple fact, I might say, of course, you need to bring your ID to the airport. Of course, at the beginning of this statement suggests or implies that the person I'm speaking with already knows that one must bring their ID to the airport. Or if someone thanks me for help, I could say, of course, I'm happy to help anytime. This signals to the other person that me helping them is expected. A subtle but important addition to the statement. Of course, I'm happy to help. Here's a word that English speakers use all the time. Right? This is added at the end of a sentence to check if the other person agrees or understands. It's asking for their agreement or their thoughts on the situation. For example, the movie was really good, right? This invites the listener to reply. Or if I'm describing the weather, I might say, it's freezing outside today, right? I'm asking the other person to share their thoughts on the weather. Anyway is another useful and common word used in daily conversations. It's used to change the subject or return to the main point after a short break. For example, if we were talking about traffic and I want to move on, I could say, anyway, how was your weekend? This is politely signaling to the listener that I may want to change the subject or move the conversation along to a new topic. Or after giving extra details, I might say, anyway, the main point is that we finished on time. Here, I'm bringing the conversation back to the key point I was trying to make. Anyway, the main point is that we finished on time. Here's another one I use all the time. So, simple yet important. This is one of the most common ways to start a new part of a conversation or to continue speaking after a short pause. It helps the conversation flow naturally, almost like saying, okay, now let's move on, or here's what happened next. For example, if I'm telling a story, I might say, so we got to the restaurant and found out it was closed. It keeps the story moving forward smoothly. Or at the beginning of a suggestion or idea, you could say, so what do you think about trying a different plan? It makes the suggestion feel casual and connected to what was just said. Well is a very useful filler word we use when we're thinking about what to say or when we're starting to answer a question. It gives us a little time to collect our thoughts and makes our response sound more natural or less sudden. For example, if someone asks for my opinion, I might say, well, I think we should wait a little longer. Or if I'm hesitating or showing a different point of view, I could say, well, that's one way to look at it. Native speakers use well all the time in everyday conversations to sound relaxed and thoughtful. Let me see is used when you need a short moment to think before giving an answer. It politely tells the listener that you're checking your memory, your schedule, or your thoughts. For example, if someone asks when I'm free, I could say, let me see, I'm free on Thursday afternoon. The pause after let me see feels very natural and shows you're taking their question seriously instead of rushing to an answer. I guess means you're not 100% sure, but you think something is probably true or you have a mild opinion about it. It adds a sense of uncertainty or softness to what you're saying, so you don't sound too confident or pushy. For example, if I'm talking about the weather tomorrow, I might say, I guess it will rain in the afternoon. Or if I'm giving a mild opinion, I could say, that movie was okay, I guess. It's a gentle way to express your thoughts without sounding definite. Next expression, or something like that. This phrase is very handy when you want to say that something is roughly true or similar, but you're not being exact with the details. It shows the listener that the exact information isn't very important. For example, if I'm describing a meeting time, I might say, we're meeting around 3 o'clock or something like that. Or if I'm not sure about someone's job, I could say, he works in marketing or something like that. It keeps the conversation casual and relaxed. And stuff is added at the end of a list to mean and other similar things. without having to list everything. It's a quick, informal way to finish a list when the exact items aren't necessary. For example, if I'm talking about what I bought at the store, I might say, I got milk, bread, eggs, and stuff. Another common situation is when describing your weekend. We went hiking, had a barbecue, played some games and stuff. Native speakers use this a lot in everyday speech because it saves time and sounds natural when the details don't really matter. It makes your speaking feel more relaxed and conversational, like you're chatting with a friend instead of giving a complete report or whatever. Or whatever is used when you don't care much about the exact details or when the choice doesn't really matter. It often shows a casual, easygoing attitude. For example, if I'm suggesting plans, I could say, we can go to the park or whatever you want. Or if I'm describing a relaxed evening, I might say, we just watched TV or whatever all evening. It makes the conversation feel laid back and flexible. Start using a few of these today in your own sentences, and you'll sound more natural right away. If you found this helpful, please hit the thumbs up and let me know in the comments if you would like me to make more lessons like this one. Until next time, take care.